Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers as we talk Seahawks football. Hey Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers for our sixth midweek show of the season. This show is going to be focused on adjusting our expectations. I think that I'd sent you a little text after the game, and I was like, we may be talking about, adjusting our expectations for this team after that win. Now 3-3, tied for first place in the NFC West. It's kind of a diminished conference overall. And the Seahawks are playing well. They're kind of finding their rhythm on offense, certainly. And then on defense, I think we saw enough there to give us some hope that maybe they can duplicate that. And if they can, maybe the defense starts to play a little bit more competently. And all of a sudden, we have a better overall well-rounded team than we had just a couple of weeks ago. And going forward, looking at the schedule, maybe there's an opportunity to eke out 8-9 wins this year, which was unthinkable just 4 or 5 games ago or at the beginning of the season. And it totally changes kind of the way that we view this team, and we view the opportunities as they come up each week and the teams we face. And it's just kind of a new way of looking at the season that I just really wasn't counting on this year.
Yeah. We were talked about that, and then we brought up, okay, let's do that. This is the show. Let's think about that. And then part of me, as I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, it was one game. Are we really going to completely change our expectations on one game? But it really isn't, because what we expected was this offense to be bad. That we expected Geno to be bad because he looked bad in the preseason, and he's looked bad at every other time he's had to play. So why would we expect otherwise? But he hasn't been bad. He's been good. Even this coming off of what, other than the 49ers game, I think his weakest game of the year, he still looked good. He's been a top 5 quarterback so far this year. He, by every statistical measure you can think of, has played better than Aaron Rodgers. Who would have thought that was a possibility? He's been significantly better than Russell Wilson, right? Who thought that was a possibility? So in a sense, like changing our expectations based on the fact that the offense is far better than we ever anticipated, I think is good. The defense has also been far worse than we anticipated. They've been, either the worst or the second worst defense in the NFL, depending on which measure you want to use, until this game. And then suddenly they took a team the length of a game, and they only gave up 3 offensive points. Like, the defense did its job in this one.
Right. So I think this conversation makes sense.
Yeah. So, it depends. Is this a one-time aberration because Arizona's offense is so beat up and just trash at the moment? Or is this more like what we're going to see for the rest of the year? Because if that defensive performance is similar to what we're going to see for the rest of the year, you've got a top 10 offense, and you've got a defense that's going to be something other than the worst in the league. Even if it's just middle of the road, it's like ends up being 17th. That's a combination that's going to win you some games. It may not get you a Super Bowl, but it's going to win you some games. And if they win enough games in a really weak NFC, you could get in as a wild card. Heck, right now they're tied for first place in the division. They're the 7th seed right now in the NFC. Yeah. So, San Francisco's got the tiebreaker, but they're the one team and they're the one team that has the tiebreaker. It's not like the Rams have looked good. The Rams have looked very pedestrian.
Yeah.
This year.
It's possible Seattle finishes second in the division to the 49ers. I was thinking about the idea that you were throwing out there on the offense. Who would have thought? Well, I remember after the draft, I kind of got excited for about six weeks or a couple months, Keith, where I was really optimistic. I was like, if this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens, Keith, we could get to 9 wins, and you weren't having it. I mean, you were just flat out. You're crazy, Bill.
I wasn't having it because, well, what you were saying wasn't wrong. It depended on, you needed
every single thing to work.
A bunch of things to fall in line.
Absolutely.
We needed, you needed the rookie offensive tackles to both be good.
Yes.
Which they are. So it's,
right.
This quickly.
I needed Geno Smith to have a career year, or Drew Lock, one of the two.
Yeah.
I needed to have the running back. I needed Penny to be healthy and to show up and have, a career year. I needed Ken Walker to come in and contribute right away. I needed Austin Blythe, who nobody really kind of knew about, to come in and be competent. I needed the defense to be good. I needed our pass rush to be good. I needed us to stop the run. I needed the defensive backs that were just completely unknown to work out and to be good. And, so I got the offensive side of the equation seems to be working. But the defense has been a wholesale failure on all accounts until this last game.
Except for the cornerbacks. Don't call Tariq Woolen in any performance he's given you this year a failure, because he's been damn good.
There's always going to be individual performances, but my point being, up until this game, and there was something about this game against the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals offense, Keith, is just not that good.
No.
But there was something about the way that they addressed this game. We talked about it in the last show with Poona Ford and Quentin Jefferson up front, in the way that they changed their gap assignments, and the way on the back end they added the diamond safety looks and took a linebacker out for quite a few of those snaps. And so that combination is potentially repeatable and putting our players in a better position to be successful given their skill sets. And so if that is true,
they pulled Cody Barton, who has been a disappointment so far this season, and they brought in either Kobe Bryant or Josh Jones as the extra defensive back, and it as a whole, I mean, it worked. Like we were saying, it worked against a really bad offense. We'll see what it does this coming week against San Diego, which is still struggling a little bit on offense, but they've got more talent. And they're better than Arizona has been.
I want to briefly share our expectations and win losses up front here just for a minute, because this is kind of an expectation show. And hopefully those watching YouTube can kind of see this a little bit. I've got it blown up about as big as I can get it. I don't think I can go any way up from this. Well, maybe I can. There we go. So you'd mentioned the Chargers being the next opponent, and we both have that down as a loss, but we also have the Cardinals as a loss.
So you have them sitting right now at 1-5.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have them at 2-4 because I thought I had the Lions game as a win, and you didn't. But yeah, for them to beat the Cardinals there, it kind of sets them up, because now they're 3-3, and then you look forward and you're like Chargers, Giants, Cardinals again, the Bucks, who have really kind of fallen apart recently, and then we've got everyone's got to travel to Germany. Then they've got the bye week,
and the Raiders are one of the worst teams in the NFL right now.
got their problems, but I still think they've got a lot of talent. The Rams have looked very pedestrian this year so far. The Panthers fired their coach. They're a mess. The 49ers, the Chiefs, and then the Jets, who've looked surprisingly competent.
Yeah.
And then the end of the season of the Rams. So this schedule, when we put this together, we were looking at, the Jets, the Giants as winnable games, the Panthers, the Falcons. They're going to pick up hopefully one from the Cardinals. We were looking at 5 wins because we're trying, what are the winnable games? Suddenly this looks much more manageable because, the Rams aren't as good as we thought they would be. The Raiders aren't as good as we thought they would be. The Bucks aren't as good as we thought they would be. The Cardinals aren't as good as we thought they would be. It's a much more manageable schedule. Now, I will admit the Giants are playing surprisingly well.
Yeah.
And the Jets have been remarkably competent. It's been a long time since either of those teams hasn't been anything other than just a complete dumpster fire. So to see both of them doing well is unprecedented.
Yeah. It's interesting how the thing evolves. And obviously I had them at 1-5 at this point. They're 3-3. Expectations are going to change. And I wanted to be able to, when I was filling out that schedule, I wanted to be able to get to 7 or 8 wins, Keith. I really did. And I worked really hard at trying to do it. And I could only get to 5 after seeing the team in preseason and so forth.
Well, I expected you to get to 7 or 8 wins. And so I made sure I got to at least 5 when I was doing mine, because I didn't want you to be saying 7 and me to be saying 3, because that's just too much. That's too much of a difference. And we ended up both landing on 5, which I found to be interesting.
But you were really kind of thinking before you filled out the schedule that it was going to be even worse than you ended up at 5.
Yeah. Like I was thinking this was a, 3 or 4 win team. Because there's too much on offense that I didn't think was going to work, mainly Gino, but also, the rookie tackles, like,
just integrating it all.
Yeah. Just getting it all put together. And then on defense, like you knew that there was going to be some guys that could play, but there weren't enough. There were too many holes, right? Cody Barton's spot, the cornerbacks. I did not think that Tariq Woolen was going to be this guy.
We didn't even think he was going to play very much.
Yeah. And so it's just, you look at all the different factors. I just thought this team was going to be bad. And even though they won week 1, that it didn't have a feel as a repeatable thing. And then when they came out and got just destroyed by San Francisco on both sides of the ball, in week 2, it's like, okay, this is who the team is. And it really felt like my prediction was going to be closer to right at that point, because honestly, this team didn't look very good. But Gino has played way better since then, and the defense has suddenly turned it on for at least one game.
So your expectations are changing. So talk to me about the kind of team that we have now. Let me just share this with you. If the season ended today, the Seahawks would own the 7 and 14 picks in round 1 and 38 and 45 in round 2. The later picks in each round are the Seahawks picks, and the early picks are the Denver Bronco picks. That's something we didn't expect.
That's crazy. That they would have the 7th overall pick from Denver and not from Seattle, and then the Seattle's pick's going to be in the teens. Which,
yes, right now. God, I mean, if they keep winning, though, I mean, shoot, who knows? But, yeah, isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. Denver has been a mess.
Oh, Keith,
you watched the game last night, right?
I didn't watch the game, but I watched overtime. I watched the end of the game and then overtime, and it was just a sad display of ineptitude on Denver's offense. And I think their defense is playing well, but how long are you going to play hard for that team? That's a hot mess right there.
The defense is legit, and the offense is just...
And I know Russell Wilson has not fallen from being a 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback to this level, something else is going on there. He's got a couple of injury concerns now. It sounds like he had an MRI on a hamstring issue today that presented itself, and it looks like maybe it's day to day, quote unquote. But man, they should shut that kid down for a couple weeks. But
yeah, I mean, because I agree with you. Russ is not a bad player. And the idea that, oh, he's washed up or that it was all Pete Carroll and it was just a mirage, or I've heard some of that stuff.
Sure.
No, Russ is a fantastic player. He's in a situation where I think their offensive line is bad, especially with Garrett Bowles out. But I also think he is eating some humble pie here, because he wasn't doing in Denver some of the things he did in Seattle, like all the extra reps with the receivers outside of practice. Some of those things, he's been more aloof, more independent of his teammates.
Yes.
By a couple of accounts that I've read from Denver media. And I think he needs to recognize that those things matter. You need to be part of the team. You need to be one of the guys. You can't just be,
saying you're one of the guys on Sunday after the game in the press conference.
Yeah, you need to actually be one of the guys, and actually integrate himself into that team, because he doesn't trust his receivers. He certainly doesn't trust his offensive line, which he shouldn't, because they're bad. But
and if he's got a shoulder, now a hamstring, those are things that are hard to overcome for any player in the NFL, let alone a quarterback that needs to be mobile.
If you're going to overcome them, you're going to overcome them by doing things differently on offense. They need to, they need to give him some layups, right? They need to give him some quick throws, some easy reads, some of that stuff. He should get 8 to 10 layups a game. And right now it doesn't feel like they're giving him anything. Everything looks so hard.
That's the way it was last year too, if you remember. Well, everything was hard at the beginning of the year.
And then when he came back, it just was a mess.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't want to talk.
But it got better.
Yeah. And I think there's an opportunity in Denver for it to get better. We'll just see. It's really hard because they're in it and it's a mess, and they're not used to this. And so
the coaching's not going to help.
No, because they're rookies. I don't want to spend too much time talking about Denver. I mean, it's important for Seahawks fans and we mentioned the number 7 overall pick right now. That could actually improve. Their schedule doesn't get any easier, and they may have an issue with Wilson where he's sitting out games, and they're going with an inexperienced guy there. So that'll be very interesting to monitor. Okay, I wanted to talk to you specifically about how you feel now about this Seahawks team going forward, and what your expectations are for the remaining games.
I expect this team to be more competitive and to win more than I originally thought. Originally, 5 wins felt a little optimistic, and now I'm looking at 7 as kind of my expectation. If the ball bounces just right a couple times, they end up at 9 and squeak into the playoffs, cool. It could also be that, they take a couple of losses that they shouldn't, and they end up, at 6 or 5. But the offense is good enough now, and has been over 6 weeks, for me to trust that they're going to continue to play at a high enough level that they're going to have opportunities to win games that I didn't think they would even be competitive in. And you're going to win some of those. And I think improving to 7 wins as an expectation isn't out of line. I think that's a great spot to, for them to be. It's way better than anyone thought.
I think that's too low. I think that you're asking them to win only 4 more games out of the next 11 to get to 7 wins. That's your expectation. After seeing what I'm seeing and the way Geno's playing, top 5 offense in the NFL, and the way the defense might come along, Looking at the revised schedule now,
I think they've also played.
I think there's more than 4 wins there.
I think they've played the easiest 6 games on their schedule.
Not necessarily.
Other than the other Arizona game.
Yeah.
But that one's on the road.
These are going to be interesting games. The Panthers are going to be an interesting game. The Raiders, I think, at the Seahawks is now winnable. The Buccaneers was unthinkable in Germany a while ago, and I think that might be a thing that I would consider. The Cardinals are so bad on offense. Usually I don't like to predict 2 wins out of any division opponent in a year, but that Cardinals game looks like it's something that would be in hand.
They'll get Nuke Hopkins and John Connor back before that game.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that helps that offense that much. That offense is just bad.
The offensive line is still a mess, but I think that a competent running game to ease some of the pressure on their passing game and a second receiver will actually really matters. Not that I'm saying that I'm right at this point would predict a loss for Seattle in that game, but I'm just saying, like, you look at the Panther game and that game are the only 2 games that kind of match the first 6 opponents that Seattle has played, right? Because the only good team in that group has been the 49ers. The rest of the other 5 games haven't been good teams.
Yeah.
So
I still think that there's an opportunity here to figure out how to win 6 games.
6 games of the 11. Go 6
and 5.
And end up 9-8.
And be the 7th seed in the NFC.
Yeah.
I mean, that road is not easy for this team, but if the defense comes around, it ends up being the defense that we thought they might be in the preseason. Now, granted, that's probably a stretch, but if they can be 14 ranked points and yards allowed overall in the last 11 games, I'm not going to, I don't want to blend that average with the first part of the season, but if they were now a 10, 12, 15, 17 ranked defense going forward.
Yeah. If they're a middle of the road defense from here
then
out,
I think they can win 6 games out of 11.
Given what the offense is able to do. I mean, it's there. I just look at the schedule and I'm like, what games in that schedule other than Arizona and Carolina are you sure they're going to be favored in?
I just think that based on what they've done so far and what they're projected to do, they're a 500 kind of team, Keith. And so that means they're going to be either 8 or 9 wins this year, depending on the way the ball bounces. And I'm just kind of going in the favorable category there.
Because that's what you do.
That's what I choose to do. But
you're a very optimistic guy.
It makes it more fun that way. It makes it more fun when you've got something on the line here. I think that it's hard because this is going to be a very interesting team to watch down the stretch, because now I'm more vested in their success.
It's been an interesting team to watch for the first 6 weeks, because even though I had no expectations for them, they've been fun to watch. Watching Geno and that offense go out and move the football and do good things has been fun to watch. And even though the defense has been bad overall, watching Tariq Woolen play and the stuff that he's done, and then seeing, Kobe Bryant go from being a mess the first couple of weeks to what he's done the last 2, has been fun to watch. Like, the Seahawks are really entertaining right now. They may not be the best team in the NFC, but they are one of the most entertaining teams in the NFC. And I'm sorry, like, to me, this year, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting this year to be kind of a slog to just get through. Can we survive the year?
Yes.
And now, like, I want to see them win. I love the fact that they won this game. Like, that was, I predicted a win last week's preview show, and it happened kind of how I expected it to. But even in the end, even if Arizona had come back and won at the end, okay, then the first 3 quarters of that game would have been really fun and really, like, entertaining and fun to watch and all of that. even if the result was bad.
Yeah.
That hasn't always been true in Seattle. Sometimes even when they're winning, it's like painful because they win these ugly, games where, luckily Sherm got a late interception or something like that happened. And it was like they survived. And it was like cardiac, problems where it's just like your stress levels through the roof throughout the game. I don't have that this year. Even
the expectations are low, so it's fun when they exceed expectations and you still don't have that angst about trying to be the best. It's just you are accepting of what they are and you're looking more at individual contributors and so forth. But
it's fun.
As it goes forward, the pressure to win, the pressure to be better every week, the pressure to beat opponents that are perceived to be better than you grows, because now they have something to play for. They're literally in first place in the NFC West and do have an opportunity to do something this year. Does it make it easier, Keith, now that Geno's playing well? Does that take some of the pressure off of this franchise, A, to win, and B, to not lose? Because now they've got some options, plus the Denver picks in the equation as well into that next draft. It seems like they're able to allow this whole thing to kind of fall to them a little bit and not press so hard.
Well, yes. Pete Carroll was never going to allow his team to lose for a draft pick. That is not how that dude is wired. We may have thought, in the interest of the franchise long term, it would be better if they lost some of these games. But Pete Carroll was never going to allow his guys.
Has expectations of Pete Carroll changed with a large portion of the fan base that maybe was against him?
I don't know, because so many people are so set in confirmation bias that they want him to fail. But I don't care.
Which I don't get.
I don't care. I just straight up, I don't care. They can want him to fail all you want, but the guy's been great. The guy's been a good head coach. And seeing this team that no one thought was going to be competitive in any way, to go out, be 3-3, look good, have Geno Smith be outplaying Russ by leaps and bounds, and all of that,
and 27 other quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to show you, the team culture is exactly what you want it to be, which is what Pete Carroll does. He may not be the greatest X and O guy. He may not be the greatest, manager of the clock and stuff in tight situations, or all of that. Who cares? He built a culture in Seattle that has been one of winning since the day he got here. And that matters. It truly matters. And the fans that aren't willing to see the good of Pete Carroll because they want to see the bad of him, are missing out. They're missing out on a Hall of Fame coach. Yeah.
Well, that's very true. That is very true. And I think he's underrated as far as an X and O guy. I think that he makes hard decisions about the team, about the coaches, about when things aren't working. He makes changes. He's not set in stone like some people perceive him to be. Nope. He's very adaptable. He's shown himself to be major adaptable over 12 or 13 years as being head coach here.
Oh, he completely scrapped his own defensive system in this offseason.
Absolutely.
And brought in another set of coaches for another defensive system. Like that, we need to keep saying that, because the idea that he is a dinosaur and will only do things a certain way isn't true. Does he want to run the ball? Yeah. And I get that some people think that that is blasphemy in today's NFL, but he wants to run the ball because he wants to be good at running the ball.
Yes.
not just run the ball to run
He
the ball.
doesn't want to have teams dictate terms on him. He wants to dictate terms on teams, and that transcends running the ball or passing the ball or anything. He wants to do whatever he's going to do. He wants to do it the best.
Yeah, he wants to out physical teams. He wants to be bigger, stronger, faster,
Yes.
And then show it in the way that they play. And it's not just, oh, we need to run the ball 27 times a game. It's we need to be good at running the ball. We need to set ourselves up. If it's going to be third down, it better be 3rd and 4 or less. And if it's 3rd and 1, we're going to run it and we're going to get that first down every damn time. That's what Carroll wants. And I think there's this expectation of the players to execute at that level that comes through. And that's part of why he has been so good as a coach since 2010.
Consistent.
Right?
Okay. So do you want to so you're saying that your revised win total is up to 7?
I think at this point it's 7. In part because I look at the defense and I need to see them do it again. There's 1 game aberrations here and there. That doesn't make, I need to see them do it again. Go out this coming week and shut the Chargers down the way you did the Cardinals this last week. I'm telling you, my win total might jump to 9. Because if the defense can do that again, and they're showing that they are
against a better offense
for real, and not, it wasn't just a 1-game aberration. And we know that the offense, we're 6 games in. If you think that they're going to suddenly, the clock's going to strike midnight and Geno Smith is going to turn into a pumpkin, I think you are, I think you're missing out on just how good he's been. So I think the offense, I think we're comfortable with. The defense, I need to see it again. Show me again. And my number goes to probably to 8 or 9. But right now it's 7.
I get that. Yeah. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I am in that range though. I am in that 7, 8, 9 win range. It really does depend. Other teams do show up and want to win games as well. And Seattle still needs to go out and do it every week and be consistent. And it's interesting. I'm less familiar with this team than I had been with the Russell Wilson team. We just have seen that team over and over and over again. And he had the ability to go out and win games for you. And we haven't seen Geno do that. I'd like to be able to see that as well on offense.
I'd like to be able to see that where he does lead the team to go get a win at the end of a game. We haven't seen it, and he's failed the number of times when he's had the chance. But at the same time, I also don't want to see it because I want to see this team in the lead and that he is doing what he needs to do to grind out the clock, that the team is winning because he's managing the 4-minute offense, not the 2-minute offense. That's Pete Carroll football. And so that I want to see that, but you in the end, you're not going to make it very far. And you're certainly not going to win in the playoffs if you can't go win a game when you need to. And so far, Geno hasn't done that, and he needs to step up and do it.
I think this show wouldn't be complete without mentioning why expectations are changed. It's the rookies, Keith. We've had this rookie class that is just absolutely one of the best classes that I can remember, where we've got
Tariq
6
Woolen looks
contributors.
Tariq Woolen's probably a rookie Pro Bowler. Abe Lucas looks like a rookie Pro Bowler. Charles Cross looks really good and will probably be a Pro Bowler in a year or 2. Ken Walker has looked good. Kobe Bryant started out terrible, but the game has slowed down for him. And he is starting to really make plays.
And they asked him to play a completely different position that he'd been not used to.
Yeah. And so
he's coming around.
It took some time, but go look at not just, the forced fumbles, but all the other plays the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. He's been tight in coverage.
He's been
a good
really sticky in coverage. He's playing really well. And, those guys, I'd say just those 5.
And Boye Mafe
is there, but still got work to do and that kind of stuff. But the 5 guys, the 2 corners, the 2 tackles, and Ken Walker, that's the foundation of that's the core of a team that can win a lot of games.
And if you can knock this next draft out of the park with 5 high draft picks again,
5 picks in the top
75 or ish. Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at
right now we've got the 7th, the 14th, number 38 and number 45, 4 picks in the top 50.
Yeah. And then the Seahawks 3rd round pick as well, which would land
in the 70s.
64, 71 would be right where it's at, 71. So I can do math. So they'd have 5 picks in the top 75. That's potentially 5 starters.
Yeah.
Go get even if you are too low to get a quarterback, you go get a defensive tackle. You go get a second linebacker for the middle. You go get a safety.
Another free safety.
On offense, you get them a 3rd wide receiver and a guard or a center, and suddenly you're like, damn, that's 10 players plus Boye Mafe, whether he's up or down.
Right.
That's in 2 drafts. That's a core of guys that can win you championships.
Yeah. And you hit a diamond, in the 5th, 4th, 5th round, which is perfectly
Tariq
possible.
Woolen.
Yeah, perfectly possible. So anyway, wow. Fun. I'm having fun. It's a fun franchise. It's got a great future, really. I think the team did a really good job turning this thing around. It's not a complete job yet. Obviously, it's a process. This is kind of a reset. It's not a complete rebuild, though, which is now evident. I thought it was going to be a complete rebuild, to be completely honest, and it should be when
they didn't trade Lockett, and they spent all the money to make the lockup TK. You knew it wasn't going to be a complete rebuild, because now you've got 2 elite receivers, and then with Disley, Parkinson, and Fant, you've got weapons at tight end. And with Penny, and then they drafted Walker, you've got weapons at running back, right? It was all going to come down to Geno and the offensive line. And those 2 rookie tackles have outperformed.
Yes.
They've just outperformed what we could realistically expect. I mean, go look at the other rookie tackles.
They're outperforming all rookie tackles.
Go look at
both of them.
Yeah, go look at Evan Neal, right? Who was, for the longest time in the draft process, thought of as the number 1 overall pick.
Charles Cross has got better stats, better blocking rates, better win rates, pass blocking win rates than every tackle chosen before him. And Abe Lucas has better rates than any other tackle in the draft, including Charles Cross. Mm-hmm. So that's crazy.
Abe Lucas
literally hit it out of the park.
Yeah. And so the 2 guys drafted, 2 tackles drafted before Cross have not played as well as him. And they've also not played as well as Lucas, who's a 3rd rounder. I mean, that's just crazy. It's crazy.
And they're not even the best players in our own draft class. Tariq Woolen.
No, Tariq Woolen is the best player in the draft class.
That's why expectations have changed, folks. Right there.
I got to tell you, you and I were on the Tariq Woolen train way before the draft. Like
starting in February.
Coming out of
especially out of the Senior Bowl. Yeah.
And I was giddy when they actually drafted him. When they drafted Kobe Bryant instead of him, the pick before.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's such a wasted opportunity. Not that Kobe Bryant was a bad player, but because I just wanted Woolen in a Seahawk uniform. Yeah. And then the next pick, he was still on the board, and they got him. And
as good as we are at kind of figuring out the draft and stuff, because we've done it for just so long, we kind of recognize this sort of stuff, but even we didn't know what we had in Tariq Woolen, Keith.
We knew that he had the potential to be great, and that's why I wanted him in a Seahawk uniform. There's a difference between potential and reaching that potential. But
in 6 games.
It's 6 games in 3 preseason games. He went from think about the first preseason game. He got lit up. It was a struggle for him in that first preseason game. But by week 1, there was no doubt he was the starter.
Pete Carroll.
There was no concern whatsoever. And now, on a serious, he's a Pro Bowler. If he doesn't make the Pro Bowl this year, I'm going to be shocked because he leads the league in interceptions. He leads the league in quarterback rating against.
Is he the best shutting guys down. Cornerback in our division, Keith? Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey is. You said that. I'm like, I got to think. I'm like,
I want you to in this when we go on break and before the next show, I want you to go comp him to Jalen Ramsey.
I need to go watch some Jalen Ramsey tape for this year. If you look at Jalen Ramsey last year, I would say Ramsey was a difference maker.
Ramsey shut down Metcalf
in every game,
but
he was a difference maker in every.
I mean, Jalen Ramsey's career interception for a single year is 4. He's only had 4 interceptions in 1 year.
Woolen's at that already in 6
and
games.
You just know that he's going to have 4 more.
God, that would be crazy. 8 interceptions in a year.
He could have more. He could have 2 interceptions in a couple of different games.
Yeah.
I'm thinking because he's just that good. He is.
He had a couple interceptions in the first 2 games that he didn't complete. And then 4 games ago, he started actually securing the ball.
Yeah.
When he had the opportunity.
And he's going to get more too, because everything he catches is away from his body. He catches out with his hands.
He catches like a wide receiver.
Yep. He does. And quarterbacks, now I don't care if you watch film on him, you don't get that sense of speed and length until you're in person. And he's got such speed and such length that I don't think the quarterbacks it's going to be a while before they're able to adjust their throws enough to keep it away from him. And they're going to end up stopping throwing in his direction.
Did they ever adjust their throws enough to prevent Richard Sherman from getting to the ball?
37 times in a Seahawk uniform, Richard Sherman intercepted a ball.
They never did, because that kind of length is so rare, and he was always in good position.
Yeah,
which we see from Mullen too.
Yes.
Right. And good position plus length means you got an opportunity to the ball. And he's so good at turning and facing the ball. He knows, okay, they're running this route because he was a receiver.
That last interception, Keith, and against Kyler Murray, when Kyler threw the ball down the left side of the field there, 40 yards, and Tariq was just in position from the get-go. Like he ran the route better than the receiver. He was in press coverage. He didn't even bump the receiver. He turned and ran, was on pocket, was on hip the entire time, and turned before the receiver turned to get that ball.
He ran the route better than the receiver did. And when you're 6'4" and can jump the way he does,
high point,
and
he had a 42-inch vertical.
Yeah,
in addition to 4.26 speed.
No receiver in that situation is going to get up and get that and catch that pass.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario there was that he was going to knock it down. And instead he caught it.
Tariq Woolen could be in the NBA and win the dunk contest. I'm pretty confident of that.
Yeah, it's a really long vertical and really long arms. He might. He's also 6'4", and he'd be dunking against guys that are like 6'8", 6'9".
Yeah,
and
Nate Robinson won the dunk contest 1 year, so it's possible.
That's true. Woolen's just an athlete.
I know. It's one of those things. It's like we fell in love with DK Metcalf in the same way. It just feels like that, only this is a defensive player, which I'd love, but it feels like the whole DK Metcalf romance, where you just saw this player and you saw the potential and just oozing, and he flashed it early and often. And you just knew that it was just going to be a pleasure to watch this guy play in the NFL for your team for years to come. And that's the way I feel about this kid.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth saying that everyone in the NFL is an elite athlete. And these two guys, Metcalf and Woolen, are super elite amongst NFL players as far as their athleticism. That's why they're so good. Well, that and the fact that you pair it with, they work their tails off constantly,
and they play for Pete Carroll.
Yeah,
who knows how to
Pete Carroll?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right. Anything else?
No. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, fun show.
That it
All
was.
Right. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWC Hockey. You know where the show's at. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button and share it if you like it. And we'll see you next time for our preview of the Seahawks at Chargers this coming Sunday. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.